Carolina. Who are you up on? Stock up.
Stock up on South Carolina. It didn't look fantastic against Clemson. They turned the ball over a couple of times. LaNorris Sellers made a lot of mental mistakes. But LaNorris Sellers also did a whole lot of great things. And what I think what South Carolina did today was at least create their own destiny, at least create a path for them to get into the college football playoff. And look, South Carolina lost some games that they probably shouldn't have lost at the beginning of the season. Close game against LSU at home, a very close game against Alabama on the road. Very close games that they could have won, but they didn't. But I think what South Carolina has shown is that they've gotten better and better week over week. They have an elite defensive front with Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart and Tonka Hemingway. Like, they can disrupt any quarterback. They can stop the run really well. And I think LaNorris Sellers has gotten better and better. He feels so much more confident taking off with the football. He feels like he can evade pressure. Like, there have been so many times where there's 2 or 3 guys on LaNorris Sellers and he can just shake it off and then make something happen. And I think that's been so incredibly impressive. But stock up for South Carolina for at least keeping their path alive. Will they get into the playoff? A lot of things are going to have to happen out of their control that benefits them, but they at least took care of their own business to where there is still a path that's created for them. If they lost to Clemson today, that path would have been gone.
Yeah, I love when rivalries mean something personal to the best players. And LaNorris Sellers willed his team to victory over Clemson with a 20-yard touchdown run, and then he gets off the field and he tweets out, "Our state." This was his vision when he decided to stay home and play for Shane Beamer, and it was cool to see it come to fruition. Now the playoff committee, in my opinion, is going to be deciding between Alabama and South Carolina, and South Carolina has now won 6 straight, including 4 straight wins. They just went on the road and beat number 12 ranked Clemson. There should be no question here. South Carolina, as a 3-touchdown dog to Alabama earlier in the season, lost by 2 points. But their resume is far better than Alabama's, and South Carolina deserves to be in the playoff, especially after this win against Clemson. And their defense, I mean, 4th down stop in the 4th quarter. They got a forced fumble in the 3rd. The interception to end the game after Clemson got all the way down into the red zone and they sealed it with the pick. That's a championship-level team, and South Carolina is playing as well as anyone in the country.
What do you think is so much better about South Carolina's resume than Alabama's?
I mean, I'll go back to last week. Coming into this week, I'm looking at the rankings now. The committee had Alabama 13, Ole Miss 14, South Carolina 15. Now, South Carolina gets a much better win than any of those teams, of those 3 teams, by beating Clemson. The only thing that I think hurts in this, like, just my mind looking at the way the committee's ranked everything, Miami was number 6. They're the only team that I think is going to fall out of the top 12 completely, right? So I don't think I don't think Miami is still going to be in the top 12. The question is, can South Carolina leapfrog high enough to still get themselves? Because remember, being 12th isn't going to be good enough. Like at some point, you're probably, depending on what happens with Arizona State too, you're going to have to find your way up to 10 to get an at-large bid possibly. So, 10 or 11. So I just don't know that there's enough space there for South Carolina to jump everything. Did they get such a significant win over Clemson today that the committee will change the way that they viewed South Carolina in conjunction with how they viewed Ole Miss and Alabama? I don't know. And, frankly, all of this too is that there's, I know everybody will just destroy me on social media for saying this, but like, isn't it fair to have a bit of an Indiana versus any of these teams conversation? Like, I think we all think Indiana's going to go to the college football playoff, but neutral field right now, if you had to bet your house, Adam, would you take Indiana or would you take South Carolina?
I think I'd take South Carolina.
I'd take South Carolina too.
With how they're playing right now. And I think too, like when you look at the Alabama versus South Carolina comparison, I mean, Alabama has a loss to Vanderbilt and a blowout loss to Oklahoma.
That was so bad.
South Carolina has a loss to LSU by 3. Yes, they lost in week 5 to Ole Miss by 3 touchdowns, but they lost to Alabama by 2 points. Other than that, they've dominated Texas A&M, beat Missouri. I shouldn't say dominate, beat Clemson. So I beat Kentucky, beat Oklahoma, who Alabama just lost to. I think that on the resume standpoint, South Carolina has a better resume. The thing that's going to hurt them is the head-to-head.
Yeah, I think you can simplify it by saying, well, they have the same number of losses and Alabama beat them head-to-head. And it's never that simple. But
it's not that simple.
It's never that simple. But, doesn't that matter? Like you have the exact same
does to me.
record.
It
One
does to me.
beat another one head to head. And yep, it was close. And yep, South Carolina had an opportunity, but they didn't win. Alabama won that game. And you can also look at, some of their common opponents. Alabama absolutely destroyed LSU. Well, South Carolina lost to LSU. And yes, there were a couple of questionable calls that definitely served in LSU's favor, but South Carolina also had a 17-0 lead. And they blew that lead. That wasn't the refs. Yeah. They blew that lead. I look at Missouri. South Carolina just barely escaped beating Missouri in the final few seconds of that game. Alabama shut Missouri out. And I know that Alabama was playing Drew Pine and South Carolina was playing the starter Brady Cook. And of course, that matters and that contributes here. I don't think that the resumes are that different to say that South Carolina definitively is a more deserving team over Alabama. South Carolina is playing so much better over the past few weeks, but I don't think I can definitively say, yes, for sure, South Carolina.
Does recency bias not come into play here with how South Carolina has won 6 straight, including wins against Texas A&M, Missouri, and Clemson and Alabama got blown out, ran off the field against Oklahoma 2 weeks ago. I think that's going to come into effect. I
honestly, outside looking in, I'll be the mediator on this argument for you two. I think you're both right. I think recency bias does show that it should be South Carolina, but I also think, Caroline, you're right that the head-to-head matters. I think the committee's going to keep them ranked the way they have them. I don't think anything changed enough. I don't think the win will be considered enough of a resume tick to change it to me.
Really? Beating number 12 team, four spots ahead of them?
I don't think that'll I don't think that'll let them leapfrog 2 teams that lost to them, that they lost to, I should say.
Fair.
And we have this debate about Alabama and South Carolina. Poor Ole Miss is sitting in between both of them. And I think everyone's like, yeah, no Ole Miss, but Alabama and South Carolina. Now, that is a different
South Carolina's
story.
playing better than Ole Miss right now.